Comedy's role in our culture has always been as a vehicle for social and political commentary. It's a tool for sparking debate and opening minds, finding common ground.
These days, we think of stand-up comedians as truth tellers.
This is a place where gun store owners are given a list of stolen credit cards, but not a list of criminals and maniacs.
But that wasn't always the case.
No matter how much the boss likes you, you can't work in a bank and bring home samples. Oh, no.
There was an evolution in comedy that began right here in New York State, an evolution that you can trace on a map. Between the 1930s and the 1970s, the heyday of the Borscht Belt, Jews from metropolitan New York City traveled north during the summer to go to the mountains. They wanted to get away from the sweltering tenements of Manhattan's Lower East Side, and for them, there was nowhere else to go.
Well, the Borscht Belt was created because Jews were not allowed and excluded from many spaces across America.
Some of the less politically correct ads would say no Hebrews, no consumptives, no Jews, no dogs.
So they created a place for themselves in Sullivan and Ulster counties, the Catskills, where landowners accommodated the crowds by shifting from agriculture to tourism.
The Thruway will be the heart of our transportation system. Over it, trucks will haul all the things we want and need. But they won't be the principal users. It'll be people traveling by car for business and personal reasons.
At its height, the Catskills boasted over 50,000 bungalows and 500 hotels.
I remember driving through Fallsburg, Route 42, and that was known as Hotel Road. There was hotel after hotel after hotel.
Both sets of Alan Frischman's grandparents owned bungalow colonies here.
And in the bungalow colonies, when you really got to know everybody, it became like one big family. And you just rented your same bungalow year after year. That's Jaime's bungalow. That one's Sadie's bungalow.
Frischman's passion is collecting, and you can see the result of that passion at the Catskills Borscht Belt Museum in Ellenville, where many of the exhibits come from Frischman's own collection, acquired as a plumber and a building inspector. We spoke with him at the museum in an exact recreation of a 1970s Catskills guest room.
This is a replica, an exact replica of a room from Kutcher's Hotel, and we have the brochure outside that you could look at, and you could see the patterns of the material. I mean, yeah, it's pretty gaudy. That was it in the 70s.
Not only does the museum have a hotel room, it has a bungalow, a mahjong table, an oral history studio, giant hotel menus, and...
So this is a bowl of borscht. Now, again, I am not a fan of borscht, I will tell you that.
Elliot Auerbach grew up here too. His folks own the local hardware store.
Of course, this was on the menu of just about every hotel there was in the Catskills.
Borscht was emblematic of the food that Jews brought over from Eastern Europe. Ultimately, it became the nickname for the entire region and a stand-in for one of the other delicacies served up here, comedy.
One of my jobs was I was a busboy in the dining room at the Fallsview Hotel, and then had a chance after dinner was served to change my clothes and stand in the back of the nightclub and see some of the most remarkable talent that you could imagine.
Eddie Cantor, Jack Benny, Jackie Mason, Freddie Roman, they all got their start in the Catskills because of a confluence of a few factors. The Yiddish theater was in decline as Jews assimilated into American culture, and a new kind of entertainment was being cultivated, and audiences were hungry for it, and for good reason.
I think certainly after World War II, I mean, given the horrific things that had happened, it was also a way to deal with enormous worldwide tragedy in a way that could lift spirits and suggest we're all in this together.
Comedy is this loophole to punch up, and it's an opportune and appealing proposition for anyone who's an underdog.
And Jews were underdogs, outsiders who had to create their own space. And what they created was sort of like Las Vegas before there was Las Vegas.
So open mic originated up here. You would have late shows after the show at 1 or 2 in the morning that were comedy showcases. Gee, there's Buddy Hackett sitting in the audience, and he would get up and tumble a little bit. Oh, gee, here's Mousy Lawrence, an iconic Catskill comedian, and here's and your name would be, okay, come up and tell a joke.
The other reason so many comics got their start here, there was sort of a built-in apprenticeship program, though they didn't call it that. Every hotel had a social director, a tumblr.
The tumblers were the beginning of the comedy, and they had to make everybody comfortable, had to make them laugh all day long. Just walking around by the pool.
That was their job?
That was their job.
Tumblers made jokes, they played drums, they were responsible for making sure families had a good time, so they'd come back the following year. Buddy Hackett and Danny Kaye were tumblers, and so was Mel Brooks.
From what I heard, Mel Brooks was got a job up here as a busboy. And he also was a drummer. And one night he was pulled into the show when one of the actors couldn't be on stage. And that was his first time at age 14 that he tried his comedic chops out.
Brooks worked for a couple of summers at the Butler Lodge and then moved on to Grossinger's before being hired by Your Show of Shows with Sid Caesar, who also got his start in the Catskills. What spring training is for baseball, the Borscht Belt was to comedy.
There was a number of comedians who came back every year so that you saw them as they grew their career. And then you would get excited because on Sunday evenings you'd turn on the TV and watch the Ed Sullivan Show, and who was there but the comedian that you saw in the nightclub the week before.
By the mid-1960s, the Borscht Belt had gained enough political power that it could attract top politicians as well as comedians. In 1966, President Lyndon B. Johnson visited Ellenville for the dedication of a hospital and became the first sitting president to spend the night at a Borscht Belt hotel. He chose the Nevele, which at the time was kosher.
The curious question was, what did he eat for breakfast? So the question is, so how do you explain, A, to the President of the United States, and B, to this big kick-ass Texan, that, you know, we can't give you ham and eggs for breakfast or sausage and bacon for breakfast, but we can give you your choice of lox, herring, pickled herring.
Well, here we have Lenny Bruce, foremost exponent of sick humor and... Oh!
But by the late 60s, tastes were changing.
People's vacationing changed. Airfare, you know, jumping on a plane, flying to Vegas as opposed to driving up, 2.5 hours or 3 hours, or maybe in some cases 5 hours out of the city and up to the mountains. I mean, this all had its effect on the Catskills.
Airplanes, air conditioning, and assimilation led to the decline of the Catskills. Today, there's a thriving Orthodox Jewish community in the Catskills, but this is all that remains of the Borscht Belt's heyday, a landscape dotted with the remnants of mid-century modern architecture, and for generations of Jews, fond memories that Marissa Scheinfeld has captured in photographs, books, and with historical markers like this one.
I knew that there was not one historic marker to honor that era, something that truly was forever cemented into the ground that said this happened here on this land.
Scheinfeld, along with photographer Isaac Jeffries and a group of artists and historians, have started cementing the legacy of this period through the Borscht Belt Historical Marker Project.
I went in at night, put lights up, and do these long exposure photographs that are kind of a testament to the art that the Borscht Belt was, and it's sort of my response, and I think the only fitting response that one can give when it's such a high quality of art that you're dealing with already.
For some, there is poetry in decrepitude. When the Borscht Belt Historical Marker Project is finished, there will be a map and a tour featuring 20 markers like this one in South Fallsburg that shows the Pines Hotel in its heyday. This is the Pines Hotel now. An historical marker in Hurleyville honors Mel Brooks and includes a quote from him provided exclusively to the project.
I was there in the glory days of the Catskills, and the audiences were tough and demanding. They really sharpened your act. It was do or die. No Borscht Belt, no Mel Brooks.
The next evolution of stand-up comedy can be found about 320 miles west of the Catskills in Jamestown, New York.
The National Comedy Center is in Jamestown because its hometown girl, Lucille Ball, said to Jamestown officials in the late 80s, "Don't just celebrate me, make Jamestown a destination for the celebration of all comedy and its artists, because no one has really done that before."
I'm going to tell you all the truth tonight.
Until recently, comedic artists hadn't been given the same level of respect as classical or traditional artists. But with the popularity and prescience of programs like The Daily Show and the rise of cable outlets like Netflix, comedy has found new audiences and new appreciation.
Stand-up comedy is a uniquely American art form. And when you look at the beginnings of stand-up comedy in the Catskills and in the Borscht Belt, that style of fast-paced, punchy, self-deprecating, topical commentary on the issues of the day comes to serve as architecture for the American sense of humor.
You have eras, and I think the Borscht Belt was a distinctive era for stand-up that eventually evolved into the stand-up of the 1960s that was much more talking about current events, etc.
It's a story the National Comedy Center tells with great fanfare in a fully engaging 360-degree smorgasbord for the senses. There is nothing static about this place, except for maybe Johnny Carson's Rolodex cards. And a visit here allows you to tailor the experience to your personal comedic tastes, from the societal.
Football is the only sport in the world a black man can chase a white man in front of 50,000 people and won't start a ride.
To the racy.
If anyone in this audience believes that God made his body and your body is dirty, the fault lies with the manufacturer.
To the scatological. And the National Comedy Center pays tribute to the Borscht Belt masters who started it all.
I think the Borscht Belt was much more self-deprecating. It was creating a community experience. You were talking about your Jewish friends and neighbors, and you were laughing at yourself.
So you could sense that comedy is a thread that's sewn through even today's comedians, the Richard Pryors of this world, the George Carlins of this world. I mean, they had that same tempo, they had that same style.
It's a little less rat-a-tat-tat, punchline, but the DNA of the comedy we see today is in the Borscht Belt. No question about it.
The comedy of the Borscht Belt eventually evolved into a vehicle through which a divided nation can talk about politics.
Fortunately, Americans have outgrown the need for facts. And so we gather here to bury news in this newsaleum, or newscophagus, if you will.
Or perhaps take a breather from it.
Good evening, sport fans. Biff Burns here in the Biff Burns Sportlight Spotlight, spotlighting sports in the Sportlight Spotlight.
For Spectrum News 1, I'm Susan Arbetter.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. For more stories in your community, click the subscribe button here. You can also download the Spectrum News app or watch us on TV for the latest information, balanced coverage, weather updates every 10 minutes, and more. We'll see you then.